So unfortunately, what happened in Boulder a few hours ago is a horrific segue into what I wanted to teach tonight. And it's something that I know that has been on our minds a lot. Predates October 7th, but it's only worsened since the Hamas invasion of October 7th. And that, of course, is hostility towards us, not just Israelis, but Jews everywhere. And this is something that you and I have dealt with our entire lives. Some of us have experienced anti-Semitism firsthand, some of us haven't. But we read about it every day, we see it, we know it's part of the world in which we live in. But why? Why is that the case? Why have people throughout history, going back centuries, had hostility towards us, the Jewish people? I mean, we're a pretty nice people. Of course, we have our bad apples, but overall, I think we're pretty nice. I know I'm a little biased, but I like Jews. Why they've always had hostility towards us. So if you go to the first box at the top of your page, and this is an insight I recently read based on an article by one of my colleagues, Rabbi Benjamin Blech, entitled, "Why Do They Hate Us?" There are, of course, in part one, the 5 historical reasons why there are those who have been full of Jew hate. There's historical scapegoating. Throughout history, we have been used as scapegoats during times of societal upheaval, blamed for various challenges without justification. We all know that when times are tough, when people want to be victims, we're an easy target. And we've seen this again and again and again. We've seen religious prejudice. Theological accusations, such as the charge of killing Jesus, have fueled hate, portraying us as inherently malicious. We're all familiar with economic envy, stereotypes, untrue stereotypes, depicting Jews as disproportionately wealthy or controlling financial systems have incited jealousy and resentment. We're all familiar with cultural and social isolation. Jewish communities maintaining distinct religious and cultural practices have been perceived as unwilling to assimilate, leading to suspicion and hostility. And then, of course, especially since the founding of the State of Israel, we're all familiar, we see it even more now, modern political anti-Semitism, contemporary movements, sometimes mass Jew hate under the guise of political activism, particularly through disproportionate criticism of Israel. The double standards that we see every single day on social media, and unfortunately in many of our mainstream media sources, we all have countless examples. We all know of the lies, the double standards that our Jewish country is up against every single day. Recently, I was at a bat mitzvah at Camp Young Judea, and many of you may be familiar with Deborah Lipstadt, who is the former envoy on anti-Semitism appointed by the Biden administration. She was a guest at the Benot Mitzvah at CYJ. And I had a few moments with her, and I asked her, who should we be more afraid of, the extreme right or the extreme left? And she looked at me and she said, be afraid of both. The extreme right is violent, and the extreme left is polluting the minds of young Americans at too many college campuses. And she reminded me that the extreme right, the nationalist right, and the extreme left, it's not just a moment now in American history. This has always been the case throughout the centuries, going back to European history. The right, the extreme right, and the extreme left have always shared one thing in common: hate towards you and me. But there's one other reason that I found in this article that I had thought about before, but never made this connection. And when I read this article a few months ago, I pinned this. I kept this to share with you tonight because, of course, it makes sense on Shavuot, the holiday in which we commemorate the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. So go to part 2. Perhaps another reason why they've always hated us. As we celebrate Shavuot, the moment when the Jewish people stood at Sinai and received the Torah, we recognize that this moment set us apart in the eyes of the world. Rabbi Blech argues that anti-Semitism is not only irrational, but at its root, be a response to the Jewish mission received at Sinai. The mission that you and I commemorate tonight that was given to our people 3,000 years ago. That mission is simply to bring morality, monotheism, and ethical responsibility into a world that doesn't always want to hear it. The hatred of Sinai, based on a midrash in the Talmud found on Shabbat 89a, why is it called Sinai or Sinai? because from there, hatred, Sinai, descended to the nations of the world. It's a wordplay on the word Sinai, or Sinai in English. It's something the rabbis often do in the Midrashim. Taking that word Sinai, they play the word Sinai, which means hatred. And so the rabbis of the Midrash, who lived 2,000 years ago, knew that when God gave this mission to bring morality into this world, to stand as witnesses that there is a God who expects more from us, no matter who we are, where we come from, no matter what religion we may practice, the rabbis, in their wisdom and their insight, also knew that this would bring hatred amongst the nations of the world. We're like the teacher's pet out there, right? No one likes the teacher's pet. We're the ones saying to the world, you can do better. There is a God there that you need to pay attention to. And so the rabbis knew, and we've seen too often, that those who don't want to hear what God wants them to do, that don't want to hear that they can live better, they can be more moral, they can be more ethical, that there is a God that expects more from them. The very moment, according to this idea, we received the Torah, the world's animosity began. Why? Because the Torah is a moral mirror, demanding, challenging, and at times condemning. So let's go to page 2. Rabbi Bleck's thesis is this: they hate us not because we are different, but because we dared to introduce an eternal code of ethics. They hate us because we stood at Sinai and accepted a higher standard. A standard that you and I reaffirm tonight by being here, by saying there's something wise in these teachings. I want to learn from these rabbis and this cantor tonight, because there's something inherently wise, the values that I want to share with my loved ones and my neighbors. But when we introduced this higher standard into the world, it bred some animosity towards us. And now let's go to that next box on page 2. Is it a mission that offends? Look at Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. There we read, observe these laws carefully, for this is your wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the nations. The Torah gives you and I a mission to be a light into the nations. You've heard that phrase before. But being a light means challenging darkness, right? We all see the motif in every superhero movie, right? It's always the light, but the villains don't like the light, right? The darkness doesn't like the light. But the light brings more goodness into this world, but it also exposes some of the evilness in this world. And the evilness doesn't like that. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, once said, the Jewish people were not hated because they were weak. They were hated because they were strong, morally strong, spiritually resilient, and unafraid to stand apart. And the Torah is countercultural. The Torah challenges prevailing worldviews. It rejects idolatry, glorification of power, materialism, and moral relativism. In every generation, Jews have borne the burden of being the conscience of civilization. It's something you and I take a lot of pride in. We're proud of the Jews that have stood up for the civil rights movement, to genocides happening in this world, that have stood up for equality for women, that have stood up to help minorities in need. It's something that we continue to try to do. So many of us in our professions and in our activism, in our community service, there's a reason why so many young Jews volunteer, and so many Jews of all ages volunteer to help. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our ancestors that have passed down to us. We take a lot of pride in that, and we should. But Rabbi Bleck's thesis tonight is that we do have to be prepared. There's going to be some that don't like when a people wants to bring good into this world. And then the last box I wanted to share with you, Jewish resilience through the Torah. Despite the hatred, we have never put the Torah down. Rabbi Bleck says, the Torah kept us alive and made us hated, but it also made us holy. And Rav Sadia Gaon said 1,000 years ago, our nation is a nation only by virtue of its Torah. Our survival is inseparable from the Torah. It's defined us, sustained us, and given our suffering meaning and our existence purpose. So many of our ancestors, and there were some that did, could have given up Torah, could have given up Judaism in the hope that they would no longer be hated. And some did leave Judaism. But the fact that you and I are still here, that we have a Jewish state today, there are many communities like ours, many synagogues like ours that are thriving, is testimony to the fact that our people, despite the challenges, have not given up Torah. And so we'll continue to never give it up, despite the challenges that being the people of the book brings to all of us.